Fontaine is in the midst of a housing crisis. Welcome back to a series where we go around and inspect the housing situation of Teyvat and assess the houses based on the following criteria: environment, neighbourhood, structural integrity and overall condition and safety of the house, sustainability, and the house's history. In the previous episode of this series, we inspected Inazuma. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Fontaine, which does not seem to be doing too well. Why, you might ask, is Fontaine currently in the middle of a housing crisis?
It's a good question.
There isn't actually a simple answer to this, but this is something we're going to take a closer look at throughout our inspection to see what other factors are involved here and why they all seem to point to this conclusion. But you know what? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. You see what I did there? It's a France pun, since we're in Fontaine. So let's start with an assessment of the house in Irenie's Forest. Now, I do want to preface this video by saying, take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm no house expert, my only degree is in yapology, so while I do try to get things right, if I say anything incorrect, just let me know down in the comments. First thing I've noticed upon arrival is that it's quite a sizable piece of land, lots of balcony room and safety walls, so there's no worry of falling. I like that the current tenant or owner has even installed lanterns out front. It really sets the vibe. And while they've not done anything in the back garden, there's still some room. It's also fairly accessible by Fontaine standards, with close links to both the opera or one of two docks. The first problem we encounter though is the neighbours. I can literally see them from the balcony. Look at them going about committing their treasure hoarder related crimes. So selling this house might prove to be difficult given that you have to walk through a treasure hoarder camp just to leave the place. But let's get back to the house itself. Fontaine's countryside houses are very interesting. There's quite a bit going on here that needs unpacking. Now, the core basis of Fontainian housing is very rural France inspired, but Hoyo like to mix in a lot of different elements in their designs of things that makes it kind of all over the place. The wall looks most likely to be lime plaster and some other stuff like bricks or stone, but the wall also evokes a Norman style if we're thinking specifically French inspirations, or more broadly it's very medieval with the wooden beams and supports. And above this wooden beam, the wall turns into copper, which I just don't think is a thing that exists. I also have no clue what is going on here with the wooden beams and here, so I would assume this is a purely decorative thing. These are apparently called corbels, which in this case are being used both for supportive and decorative purposes, but they're not even. Everything on this house is super asymmetrical and kind of nonsensical when you look closer. If we're basing on the time period, aka medieval, I don't think it really fits. Wooden support beams are a huge characteristic of medieval houses, but not like this. Another feature that at least settles this house design as more French oriented as opposed to English is the door. As French buildings more commonly have arched doors and windows, as you can see, as well as the shutters. Those aren't as common in England. Then there's the roof, where things only get more confusing. It seems to most closely resemble a gambrel roof. You can see it has two slopes. We all probably know and associate this sort of roof with barns in modern day, or at least I know I do. But this type tends to be heavily associated with North America. What little information I could find suggests it originated in Europe, specifically of Dutch origin. It gets even more complicated though because it is quite similar to the mansard roof, which is of French origin. But historically, both types of roof were referred to as a mansard roof, so I have no idea. But this basically just goes to show that these houses don't have any singular inspiration. They're like a mishmash of things. Not to mention, wooden roofing like this, we can all agree this looks like wood, right? Yeah, this is pretty uncommon in France. Like a lot of European houses, thatch or slate was usually more prioritized. But again, perhaps this says something about Fontaine's world building. This must mean that wood is a more convenient and easier to obtain resource. That's just one explanation. At the same time though, if you're using stone in the wall, why is it not possible to make, say, slate tile? To add to this, it also just wouldn't make sense for the region of water that experiences a lot of rainfall and flooding to be using wood. Also, if Fontaine's landscape is based largely on the Alps, there should be an ample source of minerals to use. They literally have machines to do the digging for them, which would make things infinitely faster.
As a child, I yearned for the mines.
And as a safety inspector, I'm not sure how to feel about all this moss on the roof. The problem arises when we take a look at the chimney. Chimneys are super important in houses. You kind of need those. So it's a plus that they even added these. However, that chimney looks like it's got to be doing some gymnastics in there, because where would the hearth even go? You've got a window obstruction on both possible sides of the house it could go. If we ignore that, it could possibly go on the back wall, but would still be traveling far and at a bend, which should usually be avoided unless absolutely necessary. Also, did you know that the angle of the bend of a chimney should be no greater than 45 degrees from the vertical? The more you know. I've also no clue if this is just for decoration or if maybe it's an open roof type thing. Wait, they get deliveries here? Damn, Carrara's really going all over the place.
I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
The vibes are pretty much always a priority in Hoyo's case over other less important aspects of region design, so it makes sense. And it definitely does its job at evoking that serene sort of out in the country feeling. As for how this relates to the overarching housing crisis problem, I would hazard a guess and say, considering how complex these houses are, they must be extremely expensive, therefore only available to the upper class of Fontaine. They must be using the same architect because this house looks identical to the previous one. As with the first house, since they don't have any garden or sustainable living going on, they likely also get food deliveries. There may not be any space behind the house, but there's ample land for a garden out front to grow your own food. Again though, while the house is relatively stable and inspector approved for now, the neighbouring area is far too dangerous. Treasure hoarders, would you look at that? More treasure hoarders. So that's really what lets this place down. The one village that would have been on this side of Fontaine is abandoned, filled with treasure hoarders that have probably been faced with no other choice than banditry. I couldn't find anywhere in my piles of paperwork as to why these houses are in ruin, but I mean there is the possibility that a flood hit this town, and since they received no aid, they resorted to the treasure hoarder life. That would also explain the large presence of them in this region, and does go with the whole overall Fontaine theme, leaving the only other people remaining those rich enough to afford a house. There is one more house in the Erie-Needs Forest region, right at the opera's front door. This house is in a prime location and could easily be used as a vacation spot, its own private dock with beach stretching all along. I mean, what a view. That easily raises the price of this house.
I do not have any money.
Though with being so close to the water, it inevitably comes with complications. One, it's at a higher risk of flooding, and two, it's pretty common for hydro-slimes and eidolons to make their homes along the beaches of Fontaine. It does also have a bit of an accessibility problem. While it is but a stone's throw away from the opera, how exactly do you get there? Neither side leads anywhere. You would still have to walk all the way over here and then climb over a wall to reach civilization. Condition of the house as well, it's a copy-paste of the other two, so it's fine. And I would still argue that it's the safest one considering location. So overall, inspector approved. This entire section of Fontaine has 3 inhabitable houses in total. Let's just keep that in the back of our minds for now. A home of significant historical value, possibly dating back as far as 400 years ago post-cataclysm. This unique property offers an enriching and cozy lifestyle for those wishing to escape to the countryside. It is definitely not in the proximity of a nuclear disaster zone, and for those looking for a family home, well damn, this is the perfect location. Within walking distance to the new and improved Fontaine Institute, your children will be able to tap into their true potential. With this house, the city won't be missed. There seems to be some illegal going-ons over at this house, so I'm probably gonna have to report that to the Guardianage. Criminals do tend to bring the safety rating of a house down by a lot, and the fact that it's being used as a Breaking Bad pure water operation,
Someone cooked here.
it'll be difficult to get people to buy or invest in the property. Disregarding that, this house is way too isolated, which makes sense considering what it was initially being used for. This is the largest plot we've come across so far as well, and surprisingly well kept. I guess even treasure hoarders like a bit of gardening. Again though, an even larger issue is safety and accessibility, of which there are neither here. Giant blue water cubes floating ominously above. Who's to say there won't be another disaster? Being so close to the Institute is both a good and bad thing in retrospect. Of course, lots of Hilichurl encampments over this side, a path that leads to a dead end, treasure hoarders on this side, an entire Hilichurl village further down. I can only assume that before the explosion at the Institute, the likely route to reach the city would have been through here. So in terms of safety, probably the worst so far. But it does have a lot of land going for it, as well as a barrel already in place if you want to brew your own drinks. Even a cute little mailbox. Well, there's no chance of anyone building a house here until the Maison get this whole thing fixed. Though, knowing them, this would likely take centuries. I mean, no wonder people in Fontaine have nowhere to live. It takes them years to get a missing keycap replaced, let alone giant floating cubes of water that could fall at any second. A completely unsafe region to be living in. Why hello there, good sir. I've come for the house evaluation. Okay, it does seem like you've got a bit of a slime infestation problem over here. Not my jurisdiction, but that still does mean that the area is unsafe. Also, can you explain why you're growing your flowers like this?
Les rêves des
Anyway, this is the only farming village in all of Fontaine, so that means it is fully sustainable. Our first house has a very nice entrance, fit with a mailbox, gate, and a bell-to-ring, though I don't know how he got the wood to bend like that. The entrance looks to be a shed/lean-to, and I think this whole section would probably class as a porch. I haven't a clue what this is about, but on the bright side, we have a chimney that might just make sense. It sticks out from the side of the building, so we know there's no obstruction. And we were so close. Now, I'm not an expert by any means, but I'm pretty sure it's dangerous to have wood on a chimney. Why does it go from stone to wood to stone again for the crown? This chimney's location makes no sense either. Very medieval-esque with the jetty overhanging, and the roof for this section looks a lot closer to a jerkin head roof because of this little cross section. It even has a cozy little patio. It's small details like these that I love about Genshin. They didn't need to make the clotheslines look like it's blowing in the breeze, but it is. The one thing that does ruin it though is that only the wood is an object, so you can kind of just run straight through the clothes. And this too though, stepping in the wash bowl actually makes you wet. These two plots have another new house type. This type at least looks a lot closer to its real life inspirations. Much simpler and less confusing, but why are the wooden supports shaped like that? Not only that, but both ends of the roof are different. Oh, that's an interesting design choice. The wall seems to be clipping into the porch. Well, actually, the whole house is clipping into the mountain as well. That might take the price down a bit. You've got a balcony here, which is nice and all. Yeah, that's a great view right there. Also no chimney, so let's hope they have no hearth in there. Otherwise that would definitely go against safety regulations. But even then, houses this high up in the mountains should have heat sources, so that's not looking too hot either. At least the land is sustainable and you can grow 3 carrots. You've also got neighbours, but enough room and privacy away from them. The other house is much the same, so all in all, the condition of the structures, not many safety concerns there. As of now, there's actually no way to get into the city from the land. It would have been easy until the aquabus line was blown up, but now you would have to travel across the water to another dock just to be able to access the court. Hello ma'am, I'm here for an inspection of your house.
Is it up to safety protocol?
Being in the heart of Elenus, I'm not sure how living here would affect humans. That's something for the Institute to research, so you will have to unfortunately keep to Melazine proprietors for now. That means we already know accessibility is a non-issue since Melazines live and breathe underwater. Environment is also not dangerous for its residents. In fact, probably keeps them quite safe. You can argue the Melazine village basically has its own self-defense system. If you're willing to live solely on fish, then it's a renewable source of food and as such sustainable. First thing I noticed though, there is a severe lack of safety fences. That needs to be fixed ASAP. Then there's the houses. No, I have no idea what this is. Even the archive doesn't know. Like, excuse me, why do you have bubbles coming out of your chimney? Should I be concerned? The walls could just be a coral of some kind, but I don't know, it looks eerily similar to Elenus's body. I actually think the whole entirety of the village is carved out of his body. Maybe for the walls of their houses, it's a mixture of Elenus and sea stuff, and the Melazines have molded it together. Yeah, most of this is too magically Teyvat for me to have any other clue. Look at this light. That's just Melazine water magic right there. I think for the Melazine village, I'm gonna have to leave this to a fellow Melazine co-worker. Elenus as a whole is not really a safe place for people to be living on due to the corruption, and well, it seems actually no one is living on it anymore aside from the Melazines. Not counting treasure hoarders. Seems to be missing walls and roof. House safe. Location not so much. We've got one unmarked village with houses still intact, but abandoned it seems. Now I see the reason why. I tell you, Mason Guardianage, useless when you actually need them. How are people supposed to live when all your mechs keep getting out of control? So technically, while we don't know how long these two villages have been overrun for, if the Guardianage were to fix the mechs and get rid of the treasure hoarders, they would still need to ensure the safety of the people better and make them more accessible, maybe adding bigger docks. Theoretically after that, we would have 3 villages with available housing, but the amount of ruined villages cannot be understated. A lot of it likely comes from more and more people moving to the city due to floods, leaving little civilization out of it. If you're looking for a truly one-of-a-kind house, then boy, have we got the place for you. 123 Marlin Way caters to those who love the fishing life, being just mere steps away from the open sea. A state-of-the-art boathouse, complete with a private pier and close-up views of the waterfall. Some might say, this is a fisherman's wet dream. I'm just gonna start straight off by saying, Poisson is a safety inspector's worst nightmare. And you mean to tell me that this has been here since before the cataclysm? Not to mention, just getting down here and walking around is hazardous enough. Climbing a single ladder is the only way in and out, so that already creates a fire hazard. And the fact that we're in a cavern underneath the ocean, this is as high as the flood risk goes. Look at the amount of missing safety rails. Everywhere I go, there's stuff strewn all over the floor, so that's a trip hazard. The houses in Poisson just look like they attached a bunch of boat parts together. Okay, well, that is pretty much what they did. I'll give credit where it's due, the houses are built on stilts at the very least. Being made of primarily recycled metal from the crashed ships is beneficial since it's more durable, but still, the location is not it. Now this house faces a unique issue. There is the threat of a rift in the world and an all-devouring narwhal close by, so that might put some people off of buying. Everything else seems great though. Close to amenities with Poisson nearby, or you can fish for your own food. A private dock making it easy to access other areas of Fontaine. The house and overall area looks well kept, so I have no complaints in these departments. So I absolutely love Petrichor's houses. Petrichor as a whole is a lot closer to what we know and think of as French rural houses and villages, but with that extra Teyvat flavour. The closest real life counterpart to this roof type I could find was the salt box, as it's gabled, but the roof is uneven, though the shaping of the roof along the top, they don't tend to curve like that. Again, I think we have to put it down to Genshin being Genshin. However, we finally got some tile roofing going on. Oh, wait, no, that's still just wood. Considering the region these houses are based on looks to be from the Provence region, they usually use terracotta roof tiling, but the location of Petrichor does fit in with Teyvat's geography, which is a nice little touch because the Provence region is in southern France bordering the Mediterranean Sea, so they did match the climate. The houses are in fairly traditional colours, just like rural French housing, made of stone and brick walls. Even the chimneys this time around are pretty close to their real life counterparts, with their Teyvat trumpet chimneys next door. They basically mixed in southern France architecture with Teyvat logic and Remurian musical history. As the place in Fontaine with the closest ties to Remuria, it makes sense that they've kept their music roots. Got a door or a window? Just add a music note on it. These pipes that also look like trumpets I think are just for decoration, but it would have been cool if Hoyo actually made them look so they act like gutters or something along those lines. Even the mailbox, I love these mailboxes, though the people that live here are pretty bad at picking up their mail. I could be here all day because literally everything, like almost every piece of furniture or building or attachment is musically themed in some way. As a safety inspector, I can't say I have any concerns over structural integrity or safety of its citizens. One concerning thing about my visit to Petrichor though is that the residents refused to talk to me and kept going on about some kind of battle and barbarians. Also, there's a giant hole. Now that we've assessed the houses, let's next take a look at why exactly Fontaine seems to be heading for, or rather, already in the middle of a housing crisis. So, we have Petrichor, unnamed farming village, and even though I don't like it as an inspector, Poisson, two other very tiny villages that, while technically in-game are enemy territory, are probably still meant to be living spaces for Fontainians in lore. All of this for a total of 8 houses. In terms of individual houses in total, 1 on Eleanor, 1 in Bello, and 4 in Irenes, so the grand total of available housing outside of the Court of Fontaine is 33. With all of that in mind, let's first try and address what a housing crisis even is, or what classifies as one. There's never usually one clear cause. One of the most common reasons is lack of affordable housing. Now, is there any evidence of such a situation in Fontaine? I believe so. There's many typical patterns that you kind of associate with this. First, the decline and abandonment of multiple villages. Second, the remaining lone houses out in the country that are likely very expensive. And third, you've got more and more people moving to the city due to natural disasters. This creates a kind of ripple effect because the more disasters or the more people leave, the less opportunities and access to basic amenities, and so even more people move to the city. Don't forget that Fontaine is partially inspired by the Industrial Revolution, which also resulted in many people leaving the countryside for the city. Not to mention, getting around Fontaine is pretty inconvenient all around. The only people that would be able to afford the inconvenience are the wealthy. This all ties in with our first reason, being lack of affordable housing. We also see this exacerbated in the class divide, because what does unaffordable housing do? It causes homelessness and poverty. And where do we see this in Fontaine? In the underground Fleuve Cendra, where those less fortunate come to call home. And honestly, kind of all over Fontaine. Obviously, you have the treasure hoarder problem, and the very restrictive nature of the laws also don't help. Of all the places outside of the city, the houses in Poisson are likely cheaper than the above ground village ones, because of the aforementioned reasons. reasons, i.e. flood risk, cheap and recycled materials. Lack of affordable housing also simply goes hand in hand with lack of available housing, as in there are not enough houses being built to house the population. See, the wiki says there are a total of 562 NPCs in Fontaine. Even if we were to take off a huge amount as non-Fontaine citizens or deceased and such, and take into account the total amount of houses in the city itself, there's still nowhere near enough. Basically, too much demand and not enough supply. Do I think that Hoyo even thought this deeply about Fontaine from a, I suppose, architectural and societal standpoint? Definitely not, especially because you can only add so much to an in-game world, and they're obviously never a one-to-one representation of said world. They never thought, oh wait, we have a whole load of Fontaine citizens and nowhere for them to actually go. I think what it ultimately comes down to with Fontaine especially is how empty a large portion of it feels. Water. It's the water nation. Its focus is on, you guessed it, water. They very clearly put an incredible amount of effort into the underwater sections of the region, but this also makes the land feel very disconnected. Combine this with the already lacking evidence of civilization above ground outside of the city and core, a lot of the region ends up feeling like it's not truly lived in. Anyway, we've still got a few more regions to go for this series, so it'll be interesting to see what their housing situations look like too, but for now, I'm gonna go fly my balloon.